Hey guys, Aaron Burke here again to talk to you about the latest episode of Breaking Bad. Different location this time, working off a different computer camera. Don't have an actual camera yet, but we'll hopefully have one by the next episode. So yeah, just wanted to talk to you about the latest episode, Buried. Really good stuff going on in this episode. Great opening. I really like the kind of homeless guy picking up the cash that Jesse left behind. Just sort of like following the trail, and then finally seeing Jesse spinning around the what do you call those things? I don't know, the spinning circle playground equipment. Anyway, you know what it was, but like it. So yeah, great shot there. Great shot looking down at Jesse as he spins on the thing, and lots of interesting stuff. You kind of get the sense that Jesse is out of it at that moment. He's just kind of looking up at the sky, zoned out, like he's spinning as the world is spinning out of control for him. Definitely some metaphorical stuff going on. You do very much get the sense that Jesse is losing it by this point. So that's how we start off, and we come back to him later at the end. But then, so after that moment, it kind of takes off with Hank and Walt back at the garage, starting off from the end of the previous episode, Walt steps outside and makes the phone call as he watches the garage door lower. Hank has the phone, and you have this very panicking sense that, Walt's like, he's gonna call Skyler and tell her what's going on. I have to control this before shit hits the fan. So Walt attempts to call, can't get through to her. Very, very intense. He sort of tries to dash after her. I very much thought that the episode would continue in this hyper intense vein. Like, Walt's trying to race to get to Skyler on time. Hank beats him to it. Maybe this sort of cat and mouse chase dynamic throughout the episode. The episode did calm down after that. So it didn't go the route I thought it would, but I think that's good. I think the more intense confrontation needs to happen later on as we get closer to the final episodes of the show. So after that initial moment, we sort of cut to the diner confrontation between Skyler and Hank. Much calmer moment than the previous scene, but the calm is good because you do have a very intense build-up behind the calm. The calm is as Hank talks to Skyler, what he thinks he's doing is revealing information and giving Skyler an opportunity to come clean. He thinks this is exactly what Skyler needs. What he doesn't know is that Skyler has been in on it for years, and it's really great because on the surface you have this very calm conversation between two people at a dining room table, but there's so much underneath it, so much tension built upon the fact that we have these two characters coming from two completely different angles. One who thinks he's there to rescue her, and the other one who the last thing she needs is to be rescued by Hank, to be confronted by Hank, and she just needs to find a way out of there. It's great. This clash of interests is just fantastic. And so we have Skyler reach the point where she kind of breaks down. She's like, am I under arrest? Am I under arrest? Hank's like, no, of course not. And Skyler sort of needs that excuse to leave. And I do think it's an excuse. I don't think Skyler is as upset as she's playing it. Like, maybe she is. I mean, I'm sure there's some level of upsetness, of fear of being finally found out. But I think really she needed to use it as an excuse to get the fuck out of there so she could plan her next move. And, she sort of played up the sad, crying angle in order to floor Hank and prevent him from going after her. So I think there was an element of calculation there for Skyler. And I think that even more because of the later moment where Skyler talks to Walt about the Hank situation. It's that great scene where Walt comes back after burying the money and collapses in the bathroom floor. And then he wakes up and they have this talk. And there too, Skyler, very surprisingly, Skyler is the one who tries to convince Walt to stay in the game, to not give up to Hank so quickly. She's like, if you tell Hank, if you confess, we lose the money. we need to keep the money. Very kind of cold, ruthless move from Skyler. But it makes sense. She's very logical in her reasoning, and Walt sees that, and she sort of turns him around. And I really like that as a dynamic. It's a very much a switch around from what we've seen from these two characters. It's usually Skyler wants out, wants to find a way to get out, and Walt is the kind of the cold one convincing her to stay, and convincing her that this is the necessary course of action. And here it's the complete reverse. We have Skyler essentially calming Walt down and convincing him to stay in the game, and I think that's great. It's a great change in dynamic. It's some great growth for Skyler, who I know for many people isn't the most popular of characters, but I think this was some juicy material for her, and will sort of take her in an interesting direction from here on. So I'm fine with that. I like the angle the writers took with Skyler in this episode. As far as Walt's side of it, I was a bit more uncertain. I'm not entirely sure whether it makes a lot of sense for Walt to be so willing to give up. And I get that at that moment he's in a very vulnerable state. He just collapses, cancer's back, he feels overwhelmed by it all, and considers giving up. And if this were any other character, not Walter White, I would totally understand that. I would totally think, yes, he should give up at this point. But because he's been so ruthless up until this point, because he's been Heisenberg, this cold killer, never giving up at any cost, the fact that he now at this moment is so willing to give up, to just turn in the hat, is just a little bit, it threw me off a little bit, I guess. Sort of unexpected, I think, for the character. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It certainly switches things up. It's not that Heisenberg, for once he's not being this cold, ruthless monster. He's actually showing some humanity. It's a bit surprising, but that it's sort of going back to the Walter from a few seasons ago, back to where he was when he did have more of a conscience, back when he did care for the safety of his family more than he has shown of late. So in that sense, I buy it. It was just a little jarring because literally as recently as the last episode, he was still very much seeming like the ruthless meth lord who would not give up. Another sort of iffy Walt moment for me was when Saul sort of implied that Walt should kill Hank, and Walt said not family. Like, he was so appalled that Saul dare suggest that, like, I will never kill family, and that I think it's understandable on one level. Walt has always been a family man. Everything he has done, he's claimed it's for his family. So that reaction does make sense on that surface family level. But on the other hand, a lot of his preaching about family has been, for the past few seasons, pretty much bullshit. Like, we've gotten the idea that Walt doesn't, he cares about his family, but that's not why he's doing what he's doing. That's not why he became a criminal. He became a meth lord. He became Heisenberg, this ruthless killer. He became him because of his ego, because this is where he needs to be to feel a sense of self-fulfillment. It's not about his family. It's about him and doing what is best for himself, and living with this cancer and using it to become the person he never could before, and using it to live to his fullest potential. That's why he's become a Heisenberg. And so when he talks about family as though it's all about family, as though he needs to protect his family, there's something about that doesn't really ring true for me, especially when it comes to someone like Hank, who literally in the very last episode, he threatened Hank and said, if your best course of action would be to tread lightly. Very clear threat, very clear sense of, if you fuck with me, I will kill you. That's what Walt said to Hank. And now here, he's basically saying the opposite. No, I'll never kill Hank. And the fact that he's so unwilling, so determined to find another course of action, has just not been what we've seen from Heisenberg as of late. So I'm a little bit unsure about that idea, that Walt really just refuses to even entertain the idea of killing him. And we'll see how that plays out over the course of the next few episodes. I think that scenarios will evolve into such that Hank will back Walt into a corner, and Walt will probably have to reconsider whether or not he's actually going to need to kill Hank. So, again, little questionable for me, but I'm sure the writers will push the characters in a reasonable, convincing direction, as they always have. The other thing I loved about this episode was just the confrontation between Marie and Skyler. And very much like with the confrontation between Hank and Walt in the previous episode, there was so much tension, so many years of buildup of rage and frustration, and this feeling of betrayal for Marie in this moment where she confronts Skyler. You know, when she asks her, did you know before Hank was shot? There's just so much in there, so emotion. You know, Skyler can't even get up. She can't even talk. She can't even get up the nerve to say a word to Marie except to apologize. And by that point, it's too late. Marie just kind of like slaps the shit out of her, and it's great. It's a great moment. And again, like the punch that Hank throws at Walt, there's so much in that slap. There's so much rage, so much betrayal, so much letting out the past few years of turmoil of everything that's happened everything that's happened to Marie and Hank because of Walt and Skyler is let out in that slap, in that moment. So that's great. I really love what they're doing there, and I think it's very exciting because the end of this episode makes clear. You know, Marie says to Hank, get him at any cost, and it's clear. I always thought that the show would end as a confrontation between Hank and Walt, but I never quite expected that it would become Hank and Marie versus Walt and Skyler, and it very much looks like that's where it's headed now. And I think the possibilities of that are very exciting. We have not just, you know, brothers-in-law turned enemy, but we have an entire family broken apart, turned against one another, and the way the world is going to come crashing down. The way, you know, who knows how Walt Jr. is gonna be affected by this. We still haven't seen, he still doesn't know, and it's pretty clear he's gonna find out sooner or later. And we've already had that fascinating tease to the future where, Walt walks back into the house and is completely destroyed. And so we know that things are only going to fall apart from here, and the pieces are now being put into place for that collapse to occur. So it's really great. I can't wait to see where it goes from here. So yeah, that's pretty much great stuff. And then the last thing, of course, going back to Jesse, we have him in the interrogation room, and Hank, who looks like he's ready to reveal to his bosses the entire Walt story. He looks like he's on the verge, but it seems that before he does, he wants to talk to Jesse one last time and get whatever information he can from Jesse. And I'll be very interested to see how that conversation goes, because Hank has known that Jesse has been involved with Heisenberg, or at least suspected, and now that he knows who Heisenberg is, Hank is probably wondering what Jesse's role in all this has been, and the level to which Jesse will confess or talk to Hank. I'm very interested to see this play out, because of course Jesse hates Hank for that time that Hank, you know, beat the crap out of Jesse. The last person that Jesse probably wants to talk to is Hank, but this is a very different Jesse now. This is a Jesse who basically knows who Walt has become, and I'm not sure if he'd have the same problem ratting on Walt that he would have in the past. And I think we're going to have a lot of great material here for Jesse and Hank, and you know, to see what Jesse reveals, to see what Hank gets out of him, and then to see what Walt's going to do when he finds out what Jesse tells Hank, if anything. It's going to create a lot more confrontations, a lot more fun, and you know, this show has always been so good at exploring confrontations between characters and taking the relationships sometimes to places that we never expected they would go. And I think this episode sets up a lot of different character confrontations that we never expected would be brought to this point, but now they are. And it's going to take the show, I think, to a really brilliant place where we have basically factions on all sides. We'll have, you know, Hank and Marie versus Walt and Skyler. We'll have Walt versus Jesse, Walt versus Hank, and just all these different collisions coming to a head. And yeah, I think it's going to be amazing, and I can't wait to see where the show goes from here. That's about it. Thanks for listening. Next week I hope to have real HD camera recording this stuff, so you'll get a better picture and sound quality. I'm also gonna post this on a blog. I'm starting a new movie TV review blog to make this to make everything I'm doing a little bit more professional. So hopefully you'll go to my blog and watch this video in context, and I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you at the next episode of Breaking Bad. Take care until then.